Welcome to another episode of the Hoopsfix Podcast with me, your host, Sam Nita, full-time British basketball advocate. And on this week's show, we have two local activists. I love to spotlight people that are doing great work in their communities to help grow the game and hopefully inspire other people to do the same thing. So I spoke to Jon May and Tom Bennett. They are responsible for the Malvern Hoops campaign. That's been running for 5 years and it finally came to a conclusion last month when they launched their brand new renovated basketball courts in Victoria Park in Malvern. Now, this wasn't just an aesthetic thing. It wasn't just making it look nice. It's actually functional. So they resurfaced the floor. They put in brand new rims, perspex backboards, and it's great. It's amazing. The reaction from the community has been amazing. They said they've seen increased activity since it's happened. And what I'm hoping is by getting them on the podcast and getting them to share their journey and also their sort of top tips for other people that are trying to do the same thing, it will inspire more people to take it upon themselves to improve their local basketball facilities. You know, I say it in the podcast, but it's very easy for all of us to complain about British basketball and say the things that we don't like about it. But actually, there is a very small number of people that take it upon themselves and see it as their responsibility to change those things. And that's exactly what Jon and Tom did, which is why I wanted to have them on the show. So yeah, it's a really good podcast. Takes a little while to warm up, but I think there's some really actionable advice in there for other people. And hopefully it will inspire you to do the same thing. And if you do decide to take it upon yourself to improve your local basketball court, by all means, please contact me, let me know, and we'll see what we can do to spotlight it, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to grow the game and raise the profile of it and improve it so the next generation can have the same opportunities that we've all had from the game we love. Anyway, as always, before we get into the show, please take 2 seconds to check out our Patreon account. If you value what we're doing, go check out patreon.com/hoopsfix. That's patreon.com/HOOPSFIX. There you can start to give us a monthly or annual contribution for as much or as little as you'd like. That goes a long way in helping us do the work that we do. This costs money, costs time, and we're trying to get a return on that. So if you value it, please go and check it out, patreon.com/hoopsfix. I promise you won't even notice the money coming at your account, but it makes a huge difference to the work that we're doing. As always, let me know what you think. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment below. If not, you can get me on every single social media platform at Hoopsfix, or if you prefer some private one-on-one interaction, drop me an email, sam@hoopsfix.com. Anyway, that's enough from me. Here is this week's show with Jon May and Tom Bennett from the Malvern Hoops campaign. Jon, Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us,
Sam.
So, first of all, massive congratulations on the courts. I've followed the progress of the campaign very closely over the last 5 years, and I thought, well, now that the court's open, it's a perfect time to kind of have you on the show, talk about the journey, how you got there. Hopefully, we can inspire other people to kind of do their own thing as well. So I think, the obvious place to start is just with a little bit of background on both of you two. So kind of what is your background, what's your background in basketball, and I guess how you sort of first got involved with this project.
So I started basketball back in high school. I didn't really have any sort of facilities when I was in primary school for basketball, so I didn't know much about the sport. So it was only when I sort of got into high school that I started getting meeting some friends and getting them into basketball, and we sort of learning about the game at an early stage there. Sort of as it went on over the years, I kind of played for the high school team and those sort of things, and I guess the more I played it, the more I kind of got hooked on the sport. Kind of obsessional about the sport, and back then when basketball wasn't on the TV as much, when it was on, you would just get straight to the TV and watch it as soon as it came on in the mornings on a Saturday or a Sunday, and no one else could have the TV during that time. That was my slot for watching basketball. I remember kind of as a kid, there was a Knicks Magic game that I used to watch quite a lot, and I mean actually obsessionally, I used to watch this game 100 times as a kid. It's just that same video over and over again. So I got really, really hooked on the sport, and it kind of became a little bit of a distraction for me growing up, because in classes and education, I wasn't really focused on education. All I became focused on was basketball, to the point where my studies were slipping, because as soon as school was finishing, I just wanted to get out there. I just wanted to keep playing basketball. That just became the thing to do. So definitely my advice is, stay in school and keep educated, because it was just too big a distraction for me at the time, and it was really kind of an escape as well. Any chance I had just to get away and just shoot hoops, I'd be there all the time. So sort of growing up, we had a youth centre, and that was really the only place you could play basketball. So back in the summer days, there was a lot of groups kind of get together. You make more friends, you get bigger groups, and we used to play from first thing in the morning till last thing at night, every single day. That's just what we did in the town, and many of those players kind of went on to become a bit play for all the local leagues and those sort of things. I was very much into the street ball side of things, so I kind of didn't take the game too seriously over the first few years. I was kind of really inspired by And1 and those sort of things. So most of my time would be doing the tricks and the fancy moves and those sort of things. From that point on, we eventually got a basketball court, a new basketball court. This was 25 years ago, at the local park in Malvern, so Victoria Park. These were the lottery-funded Adidas hoops. So at the time, that for us was massive. We just went straight there. I think we just abandoned the youth centre. This was our home at the courts, and we played there all the time. And it was great. It was those perfect summers. The sun's out, playing basketball. You got the music going. It was perfect. So I did a lot of that. So about 2006, I kind of moved to London, and I spent 2 seasons playing with Kingston University, which awesome experience. Actually, it was very different to what I was used to. It was very structured compared to the previous kind of setup I was used to. But yeah, so from Kingston, some great days there, and then I've since university, I've sort of moved back to Malvern in the area, and I now sort of just run the Friday night sessions here in Malvern, where we just get all skill levels and that sort of thing to come along on a Friday night. We play for an hour and a half, and it just keeps the the sport, the fitness up each week. So yeah, it's a good place to just come and play, and it's not strict by any means in the rules. You can mess up, you can try things out. It's quite a relaxed session. So over the years, we've been going for about 6 years on it now, and just more and more people always come into play, and it's a great session, great stuff. But one of the big problems was we just didn't have an outdoor place to play, so we were always paying for an indoor facility. So that was kind of nearly up to date to where we are now.
And Tom?
My journey in basketball is very different to Jon's. Basically, 8 years ago, Jon found mine hanging out, was playing some video games, and he's like, basketball Friday, do you want to come along? I was like, I've never played basketball. He's like, just come along, you'll enjoy it. So I started going to sessions, never really improved, did my knee ligaments, dislocated both my thumbs, got knocked unconscious, and sort of stepped away and sort of doing the media side of it, for the local team, which is Malvern Hoops Buzzards. Started doing sort of photography and video, then doing some match reports and getting exposed in local press. And from there, just sort of volunteered more in basketball as a whole. So I do community coaching, stuff for sort of things like locally, like Leagues for You. And that led to going into an actual career in basketball with the Worcester Wolves, working way through that there as well. So yeah, I haven't been in basketball as long as Jon has, but in that short time I already realised how big a sport it actually is, and sort of the funding and attention it needs from the government and sort of governing bodies to help sort of progress it and sort of give it its true potential.
So, clearly you've obviously both got a passion for basketball. You've been involved with it for a number of years. Like everybody, you see your local courts and you think that they could be better than they are. They're not exactly what you want them to be. The difference is that obviously you decided to take it upon yourselves to try and make that change. And I'll be interested to know kind of what made you feel like you were the ones to do that, or why you felt like a need to do that. Whereas, unlike most people, you're just going to complain about it, go back and just carry on playing there and just expect someone else to fix it. And I always say, it's very easy for all of us to complain about British basketball. We've all got our issues with it, and we can all sit here and bitch about it for as many hours as we want. But actually, I always say that, rather than us all complaining about it, let's all try and be the change, right? Let's look at the things that we can do to make that difference. And you took it upon yourself. So what was it that made you two feel like, this is something that actually we need to do?
Well, kind of the basketball court idea was, it formed a lot longer than when we first started the campaign. So I used to play a lot down the local park, and I'd seen 25 years of use on the hoops and the courts that were down there. And over each summer, I kept thinking to myself, I should probably say something about this, because the hoops are worn out, the backboards are cracked, the nets have just perished, the flooring, the surfacing was uneven.
And it was a surface to actually use.
Yeah, that's true. And one of the big problems we also had was the fact that it was kind of a Muga sport, so it's a multi-use games area, which meant that in the peak of summer you've got football and basketball players using it at the same time, and across each other. So you've got goals on each side, and you've got basketball hoops going the other way. So every summer there was always this clash, and it was just like, this is getting crazy. And I kind of thought, at the time I think I was hoping someone else would take the gauntlet, but sort of 2 or 3 years passed, and then I went down there one time, and all I remember seeing was this guy came down with this kid. They were on the far hoop in the corner, and they were there first. They were on the court, and then a group of kind of footballers came down, about 10 of them, and then they suddenly started playing this full court game. And I saw this dad and his kid leave, and it was like, right, that was, for me, that was the big moment. That was like, okay, I'm going to have to do it. I'm going to step up to this. So when I kind of got back to my place and I thought about it, and I think the first thing I did was I wrote a letter to the council, and I basically put my idea out there, and I said, is there anything that can be done to fix these courts, or even the idea that we could have a new place for playing basketball, because it's dangerous more than anything. It's a health and safety issue right there. And they got back to me and they said, you've got a good point, basically, and we kind of want to hear more about your suggestions. So I think that's kind of when I brought Tom in.
Yeah.
Because at the time I thought, okay, I know this is going to, I'm not going to be able to handle this, whatever's going to happen on my own. I think there's going to be a lot of things to go through here, and if I don't have someone with me, I'm not going to be able to talk about it. I'm not going to be able to, discuss ideas or find out if things are worth mentioning or not. So yeah, I brought Tom in at that stage.
You had a phone call one evening. You're free for 5 minutes. Took it to like 6 hours, but
had a lot of ideas.
Yeah.
So in terms of the timelines, this was 2016?
Yes.
That was 2016, yeah.
And so what were your first steps from there? You were like, okay, well, the council said that they're interested, so this is potentially a thing that, we might be able to shape the direction of something if it was to happen. Kind of what were your next steps?
I think firstly we sat down and discussed where all the courts are in Malvern and the actual hoops and what facilities there are there. And we sort of drove around the town looking at the facilities, taking photos, getting measurements, sort of writing almost like an evaluation of each site, of like the downfalls, if there's any pros and cons, and then sort of put that into a presentation document we can actually take to the council to say, look, these are the facilities, they're not good enough, they're not safe, is there anything we can do to sort of like bring in facilities that are and up to scratch?
And then from there, like, what did the council say? Do you feel like the council, like, was there? I mean, obviously these things are not free, right? It's going to cost. There's going to be a level of investment that's required. It's a lot of hassle for the council to take on when they've got a million other things going on. Like basketball, as we know, is not normally a priority. Like, kind of, what was the feedback from the council? Were they very much like, if you keep guiding this, if you keep leading this, that, we'll come with you. We've potentially got some budget for you. Like, why at that point? like kind of when you were thinking this is actually going to happen, or the possibility of this happening, how real is it? Like, kind of what were you thinking about it?
I think it took quite a while to get to that stage.
Yeah, it did.
I think there were so many stumbling blocks to start off with. Like we'd find what we thought could be a potential site for the new courts, where they could go, to be told, oh no, we don't own that site, it belongs to another council, and then okay, well this site, oh that's owned by somebody else, and it was just sort of, if we'd known these things in advance, so like who owned the land, or if we could see the land registries, who actually owned it, who we could approach straight away, we probably could save ourselves, I don't know, maybe a year.
Yeah, because we did find a great site that was at the bottom of a football field, and we said, well, that's got to be perfect. But when we put it to the council, they were like, no, that's all taken. You know, you can't use that site for anything. Like, so there was a lot of back and forth. But you know, until we were able to kind of, like Tom said, review all the areas and trying to come up with some options for them, you know, it helped for them really to kind of skip over what was, you know, where the potential could be, to sort of fine-tune what we were looking at. One of the big things that we stumbled upon was the kind of sports manifest for Malvern, and it was talking about, you know, all the investments and that have been put into sport and that sort of thing, and it was a good sort of maybe 20-page document. I was just looking through it and I saw this one line, and it said, there have been no requests for new sports facilities in the town, and that was the moment we were like, okay, so we know, so we know we can ask for stuff, and yeah, from there we just kind of, we had quite a few meetings with the council to kind of put our ideas across, and they sort of said to us, which was probably one of the longest parts, was to go away, speak to suppliers, get costings, you know, find out as much information as you can so that you can come back and present it to, was it 22 councillors, I think?
Something like that, yeah.
So we had to do a huge presentation, but we had to nail this presentation, and we had to make sure that we could try and get everyone on board and understand where we were coming from and why it was essential, and more importantly, how we can increase participation in the sport in Malvern. If we could do that, then there was more likely we were going to get a good response from the council. And we attended this meeting, and it was quite daunting, I think, because we kind of scoured the room to see, you know, who we were up against, and there was a lot of age group differences, a lot of people who were ready to kind of say something like, you know, we don't need this and that sort of thing. And we did our presentation and we got 100% feedback, so all 22 councillors agreed, and this, you know, they gave us a round of applause. So it was like
that was surreal.
Yeah. Yeah.
How far was that meeting after the initial contact you'd made with the council?
Probably a good couple of months after. But again, most of that time was back and forward with the council. We would, because I mean, for neither of us, this is our full-time job, so we're trying to do our full-time job, and then whenever there's a slot, we can go and try and quickly get a meeting. Yeah. And you know, sometimes we had to leave work early because the only time they could speak to us was here or there, and you know, if we didn't attend those little meetings when we could, you know, who knows, it may not have happened. So yeah.
But there was lots of little things that sort of help with it, where it's like, oh, we need a measurement, but we can't get down there, so give us the measurement stick, we'll go and do it.
Yeah.
It's just trying to work proactively with them to say, look, we're on your side, we want to help, we're trying to help you do this. Just, you know, we're at the end of the phone, we're at the end of an email, we can do whatever you need us to do. And
mm-hmm.
So a couple of things there. Like I said, I'm kind of trying to take this as if an outsider is looking in and wanting to do their own project, like what they can learn from your experience, and ideally sort of give them some shortcuts rather than going through the struggle that you've had to kind of work it out for yourself. So one of which you said there, like you could obviously save a lot of time by actually knowing which plots of land were potentially available for you to be able to do work on. You know, if someone else is trying to do this in, you know, I don't know, wherever, another town, is that information publicly accessible somewhere? Can you go to someone in the council and say, we're looking for plots of land that like could potentially have a basketball court on it, that are not privately owned, that don't have any restrictions around it? Like, what are the requirements, and what's the department within the council or wherever it might be that they would need to speak to be able to find out that information?
I think on some of the council-owned facilities around Malvern and Worcester as well, it says who controls it on signage on site, but there needs to be signage there for you to see that. But if you sort of just go on Google or go on the actual council websites, if you look in really fine detail, you can find the information. Obviously, the first time we did, we're like, where do we start? If we didn't know this before, then obviously we could have saved a lot of time in the process of getting the courts put together and.
Yeah, and then the other point was when you're contacting the council, like who is responsible, like at the council for this kind of thing? Who was it that you contacted at the council? Is there a, is it the Parks and Recreation Department? Is it the Sports Development Department? Is it just the general, I don't know, mayor? Like who is it, the person that you're speaking to at the council? Who is the main point of contact that would be responsible for this type of stuff?
So we went to the Malvern Hills District Council first, and that's where we originated our first meetings with them. But they directed us to our town council, who were responsible for the certain areas of the town and their development, which we found out only by going through that channel. So once we had made a contact with the town council, we were able to then, freely talk back and forward and discuss ideas quickly. Once we had that point of contact that was available to kind of hear us out, we could take it a lot further from there.
And so they wanted an idea of costings, so you've got to contact various suppliers, I guess you've got to work out like what is it that you're actually trying to do? Like, are you looking for a new surface? Are you looking for new hoops, new backboards? Are you looking for seating? What are the things that you want? And then who are the suppliers for them? Like, when you talk about kind of what your minimum requirements were in terms of what you wanted, what were they? And then secondly, when you talk about the cost of something like this, your initial, approximate budget, like what were you looking at? What do you think the cost was going to be?
I think for, when we spoke to the council, they kind of said to us, go away, find out what you can about the type of facility that you would be looking to have, and we, use that as a starting point. So kind of Tom and I we looked around the world at kind of the best courts, because we thought, if we set the standard high, this might inspire more courts around the country, because the kind of Adidas hoops had seen their day. They wherever I travelled around the country, you can just see that those days for those hoops have gone, and it was like maybe we could inspire like a whole new wave of outdoor basketball facilities across the country if we do it right and do it find a cost that kind of suits the council. So when we did our research, we found, I think we went through about 35 different suppliers, because we wanted to get an idea of the kind of ballpark figure, and that was something we had to bring up in the presentation was you have to have minimum 3 to kind of compare against in prices and that sort of thing. So you do have to contact a lot of people, you have to get a lot of quotes, and then kind of formulate that into a graph and charts so that it's easy for other people to kind of understand what you're doing there. And when we looked at a lot of the reference images, they had this kind of outdoor sports surface on the floor, and we were just like, can you imagine if we could get that outdoor surfacing in Malvern? Because the surface that we've played on for 25 years has never been touched. It's just it's seen so much over those years, and it's just never been touched. So to be able to have a surface that was kind of all weather, if it rains, it kind of goes through the surfacing and it just dries instantly. If I had that as a kid, I mean, who knows where I could be playing basketball, and it was just being able to kind of bring that basically like a modern version of what basketball courts should be for playing outdoors. And so when we kind of settled on this outdoor sports surfacing, we put that to the council, and we had to say, this is great for all weather. It means people aren't having to wait around for the rain to dry up. They can get straight back on and carry on playing. It's shock absorbing, so it's great for your knees and everything whilst you're playing. It's got good grip, for health and safety reasons. And we had to go through all these kind of little details to explain why that could be a good thing to have for Malvern.
Yeah. Well, I think also,
and so,
any advice?
Yeah, sorry, go on, Tom.
If you sort of try and aim high with your figures and the quality of court you want, you can always be brought down. Whereas if you sort of go in, we'll try and do it cheap, you'll never get a higher figure than that. Go high, so at least you can come down a little bit rather than go low and be stuck at that level.
And the council kind of...
So what...
the council, they wanted the input from us because we are knowledgeable in the sport and we know what's good and what's not. And so for them, having these facilities, in their eyes, obviously they don't play basketball, so they don't see there's a problem down there. If there's basketball hoops, then basketball's ticked. Do you know what I mean? In their eyes. So for us, it's like they trusted us to kind of create the vision. What's good? Tell us. You tell us. And so from our experience, we could say, these are the best. This is the best. And we could put those things together. Yeah.
So what was that initial cost? Like the approximate cost that you were looking at? Like what was the budget that you said to the council? This is how much we're going to need to be able to do what we're trying to do here.
Well, it was a bit of a shock in the room the first time we came at it because we said, if we want to get the best of the best of the best in Malvern, which basically means we get the best outdoor basketball court in the UK, you're going to be looking at about £90,000. Right, so this whole room, you just heard.
They're like, what?
Yeah, this huge wave, like, oh my god, and so they kind of had the idea then, like, okay, so that's the top level of what we could get, and we then,
like, what's the bottom level?
yeah, they did ask that actually, yeah. But we tried to sort of stay away from that, but I think once they had an idea of a figure, because that was the other thing, it's like when everyone was in that room, no one knew anything until we told them. Like no one had any idea. So once we were able to explain what it could do for Malvern as well, you could see a bit more uplifting there in the room. But we did work with the council, we worked with our suppliers, and we were able to get that figure down, I think, to about 70. I think it was 72,000.
Yeah,
in the end, but that was everything included. That was the security, the fencing, the surfacing, the hoops,
labour costs.
Yeah, labour, concreting, the site, digging, all those sort of things. So, all this stuff came from America as well. All the actual backboards, the courts that we've managed to achieve are the same ones that Dwayne Wade has in his back garden. So for us, that's we did it.
So that, like the council, I'm sure that when people listen to this, like 190,000, like when you talk about the breakdown of those costs, that from that initial quote or that initial projection, like what was it that was so expensive? Because in people's mind, I think, well, you're talking about a couple of hoops, a little bit of surfacing. Like, how does it come to 190,000? Like, what is the split of what is costing the most money there in that initial projected quote?
Oh, so 90,000, yeah, not 190,000.
Yeah.
Oh, was it 90, not 190? Oh, I misheard. Okay, 90,000. So what? The same question applies, but remove 100,000.
Yeah. So from 90,000. But I think when we got it down, I think the big cost was probably the construction costs for actually digging up the site, moving the earth as well, which was another thing that had to be factored in. Laying the foundations, the concrete setting, like all that sort of stuff, I think was
close to 20,000.
I think it was more than that, because I think that was one of the majority of the costs.
So I think they took 400 tons of soil out and put 600 tons of concrete back in. The actual pad the court sits on, and foundations for hoops to go into. Yeah.
So I'd say
that's the big thing is, I think that a lot of there's been obviously a massive amount of art court projects that have opened up over the last sort of year and a half we've seen, but the vast majority of them, and I'm not knocking them, they're great, but they are aesthetic, right? It's just like, let's put some paint on the floor, it's going to attract people down there, you're going to get more people playing, and we can make a bit of a hoo-ha around it. But actually, what you've done in Malvern is considerably different in the sense that you've actually resurfaced it. You've pulled up the floor, you put in new floor, you've then laid the FlexCourt on top of it, you've then installed new hoops, you've got the perspex backboards. It's not a multi-use games area, so there's not football goals underneath the hoops, so you're not competing with football players to be able to play basketball. It's actually a dedicated basketball facility outdoors, so to speak.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So okay, so the council, you've spoken about the money, you've told them what it's going to cost. What's their reaction? Are they saying, okay, we think that we can fund this and we believe in it? Or are they saying to you, well, this is a lot of money, we don't think we can come up with all the funds, we need you to be able to show that you can put some skin in the game and raise some money too?
Yeah, that was a big thing. So it was kind of, they had to go away and review their budget and see what was achievable. But they said, if we can raise, I think it was about 65,000 or something. Can you guys raise the remaining? No, we were left with $5,000 to raise. Yeah. That was our challenge. So we had to raise $5,000, and if we could do that, there was potential this was going to happen. So this was that was 2017?
It might have been 18.
2018?
Yeah.
Early 2018. So they basically.
So just to get to this point of raising the money, it had taken 2 years.
Yeah. and the amount of meetings we had, probably 25 meetings by this point.
Yeah, plus telephone calls.
Yeah, and countless emails as well.
Which I think is a key thing for people to realise, that, you know, especially when you're working with councils, it's not something that a case of, you know, you say you want to do something, they say yes or no, and then a few months later it's all signed off and you're going. You know, this is a very long process that takes a lot of back and forth, a lot of sign off, multiple quotes from different suppliers, because they can't just go with the first quote you give them, etc., and so on and so forth.
That's one thing we weren't prepared for in the beginning. We never believed the amount of work that we were going to be having to be involved in, especially when, like I say, this wasn't our job, you know, as our full-time job. So how we were going to try and achieve all these things that they wanted from us, and there was deadlines as well. You know, if you didn't get it to a deadline, you know, then you miss your slot. And so it's been a good sort of 5 years of a lot of pressure to kind of get it to where it is. But when you look at it, we're over the moon. Yeah.
So they've told you that.
I think it's important to say that, obviously, with the fundraising, obviously the council assisted as well, but then we had to apply for 106 funding as well, which basically, if ever a developer builds like a housing estate or an industrial estate, they have to put money into a pot for local facilities, which people can tap into, and that was what mainly funded the majority of the courts.
Interesting. Okay, well that's good to know. I think that's a useful thing for people to be aware of. So the council have said to you that you need to raise the $5,000. You know, in your mind, were you like, well, that's not a lot of money considering they're putting in 65 odd, or in your head were you like, that's actually a lot of money to raise? How are we going to go about it? And kind of, I guess, when you thought about like how are we going to do this? What was the process in terms of working out your fundraising strategy?
I think definitely one thing that was difficult in the beginning was the fact that when we first started the idea in 2016, we put up a Facebook page and said, this is what we're planning to do. And a lot of people started following us pretty quickly. But as the years went on, you could see the numbers started going down again because people were just losing interest. And this was at the point where we needed people to kind of help us with the fundraising. And that was hard because until we could get to a point where we could figure out what we could start doing to get the fundraiser, we needed to keep those people interested long enough to get to the point where we could kind of really help, you know, use their help. And a lot of people were saying, if you need help with anything, give me a shout, let me know. And even some of those guys sort of disappeared off the radar after a while. So when we first started out with fundraising ideas, I think, what was the first thing we did?
The t-shirts.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
t-shirts.
Merchandise. Merchandise to kind of get the whole...
Did you manage to sell a lot of those?
Not in the beginning,
no.
Because again, it was just people. I think people had sort of seen our struggle and they thought this is never going to happen. And I guess at the time, even we were probably doubting that this was ever going to happen. So it was really hard to keep that motivation and show people that you're still as passionate 2.5 years later than you were, you know, at the beginning. And so we sold a few of those to kind of get started. And I think the next thing we tried to do was we tried to do a come and play event. So we spoke to a local sports centre and we asked them, can we run an event here and kind of maybe have raffles and those sort of things to come along? And it became so difficult to try and even organise that event when we were trying to do now meetings with the council, trying to prepare presentations, trying to do our full-time job, family life. It was like trying to organise that event as well was just overwhelming. And I think the person we were in contact with, they were sick, and then someone else moved in, so it was just so difficult. We didn't get around to doing that, but we did plan to do it again, and we said we're just going to go all at it, and we'll definitely have this event. And that was obviously right when COVID started, so we lost that whole option completely. We had other various ideas for fundraisers, so we contacted the BBL, and we said we contacted every team in the BBL, told them about our campaign, told them what we were doing, and said, you know, is there any way you guys can help us out? We want to do a BBL raffle, and
They sent us all sorts.
Yeah, every team in the league.
We had tickets, signed jerseys, signed balls, just stuff arriving every day in the post, and it was fantastic.
So that helped towards the fundraising as well.
So were you successful in raising the 5,000 yourself?
Yes and no. So, and I say that because when we spoke to our supplier, one of the first things we did was to kind of speak to him and say, we've been challenged to raise £5,000. Can you help get us a discount of anything, so that we could kind of claim a discount from that side towards our funding pot? And that was a kind of a bit of back and forth. And our contact, who was in the Netherlands, Dennis, he spoke to his supplier in America and got back to us kind of a couple of days later, and he said, the company in America was so impressed with what you guys are doing, they're going to knock $2,500 off the total. So we were like, yes, that's half done.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was good.
So then the remaining 2.5, was that done through your various fundraising endeavours?
So we actually raised a bit more than 5, including that, because we raised the remaining doing our fundraising, our raffles, our competitions. We had a competition, we gave away backboards and hoops and those sort of things. And then my company, which is owned by my dad, so he invested 2,000 into the project as well. So we kind of got our part in there. And I think because the plans originally were for the 2 courts to be side by side. So, my dad was like, I tell you what, I'll put in, £2,000 from our company if we can kind of get 2 meter space between the courts, because it's kind of dangerous if you've got 2 courts side by side with no boundaries. So we kind of sponsored that section of the court. So that went into the final cost. So we achieved our target. And a little bit.
And then at what point did it become a multi-sport venture involving netball as part of the campaign as well?
That was quite early on, to be fair, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was, again, out of the council's idea. They said, look, if you can get more sports on board, you could potentially get more backing and raise more interest. So we thought, well, okay, netball's quite big in Malvern as well, and it's obviously another handball sport. So we approached netball, they got behind it, the local teams, the community, the local sort of mini leagues. And yeah, sort of snowballed from there, didn't it, really? All jumped on board. And
well, the original idea was that we were going to have a site where it was basketball one way and netball the other. So again, it was going to be a Muga Sports space, but then it wasn't kicking footballs, whilst you're trying to play. Everyone was shooting at a hoop, so it kind of made sense that way. But the site we actually found, and that everything was greenlit for, we realised that the netball courts would actually have to be stretched in order to fit perfectly, or they would be too small to fit perfectly on these 2 courts, because the area we had was so small that we ended up with this idea that, okay, there's a tennis court space that we could mix with netball further down that would give basketball its own space back. And that was kind of all going ahead, and then they found out that the site they were just about to start digging on had this major gas line running underneath it. Everything crumbled. The plans were right back to square one. It was like the most devastating moment of the campaign for us at that time.
The council were like, we've got a problem. There's a gas main under the site. We didn't know about it. I was like, oh, okay. And I rang Jon. Have you heard about it yet? What's the cost to move that? They're like, oh, another 100k. We're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And the council like, could you raise that? We're like, no.
Yeah. No. So that kind of.
So how did you end up getting around that?
Well, at the time we were just like, okay, this definitely is never going to happen now. But the council were keen to kind of keep the idea of the basketball courts at Victoria Park. So they went back to the planning department and they said, is there anywhere else we can kind of put this in Victoria Park? And they found a spot that was, it was an old football pitch that used to get used quite a lot. But over the years, the football facilities around Malvern, there was just so many of them now that the teams that used to play there are now playing in other places. So there was this area where it was like, okay, well, there's no one really plays football here anymore. This is a perfect place for the basketball site. And looking at it now, it is the perfect place. Like, it's so much better than where it was before, because you've now got this area where you completely 360 around the entire court. You can have people watching, crowds, everything. It's a lot more space, a lot more things to do events with, which is great. Yeah.
And so has the netball been set up on a completely separate part of the park?
Yes, so the netball, basically due to COVID, the netball installation was delayed. So the launch date for us was the 29th of August for the basketball courts, and it was supposed to be the end of next month for the netball courts to get put in, but they said they've been slightly delayed, so I think there's another 4 weeks. So I think end of November, start of December, the netball courts are going in. So the netball community is very looking forward to that. Yeah.
For sure. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning, and also it's I think one of the reasons that you've ended up on this podcast, when there could be other people that have done exactly what you've done, but I'm completely not aware of it because they haven't done a very good job publicising it, right? But from the very start, and I remember from the days from 2016, you launched with a website which was very clear in terms of what you were trying to do, the goals of the campaign, and then did outreach. You reached out to various people, you tried to sort of raise that awareness of it. Like, how important of a piece do you think that is? It's all good. Obviously you have, the core of it is doing the pitches to the council and make sure the council know what you want to do and getting the quotes and do it and doing the things that you need to do to actually make it happen. But the publicity side of things, the marketing side of things is obviously key if you're going to raise support, raise awareness, to be able to get more people backing what you're trying to do. Like, kind of, how important of a piece do you think that was, and why do you think it was such a key thing that you were doing from so early in the campaign?
Well, I think that's a huge thing, because one of the first things the council said when we met them was, is there demand for it? Are people going to use it? So the first thing I do is get support from the local basketball community, get them on board to show that support, get them to comment, get them to send us emails, send the council emails so they're aware of, there is a demand for it and it will get used. I think that was one of the main key messages we tried to put across from day one.
And one of the things that we kind of discovered since then is that the participation and the amount of people that we know about that play basketball was enough to get this court built. But come the launch date, there is hundreds of people that I've never seen before. It brought people out, people who kind of gave up on basketball and suddenly they're back, and faces I hadn't seen for years, and suddenly everyone's playing basketball again. So the amount of people that turned up on that open day just blew me away. I mean, if I knew there was that many people involved, we could have gone even further, but I just didn't know. I wasn't aware of it.
I mean, it was a bank holiday weekend. Yeah. We already had plans there away, and there's still over 300 people there. It was insane, absolutely insane.
Wow. Yeah, I think one thing that people underestimate, at the moment we're involved with our own court renovation project in South London, and one of the key things from early was to be able to prove the need for it, right? So it's not just a case of me going to the council and saying, we want to do this because we think it's a cool thing to do. It's actually going to the community that uses the court and getting surveys filled out, doing polls online, doing Twitter polls saying, would you like to see a renovation on this court? What would you like to see? Would you like to see spring-loaded rooms, perspex backboards, a flooring? And I think that's something that, if people are going to do their own campaign, it's something that they need to really think about beforehand. It's like, be able to show evidence of the desire and need from the local community, so there's people behind it, there's support for it, and it's not just you two as the two people that are spearheading it saying this is what we need to do without further evidence beyond yourselves.
Yeah, I think the fact that the Malvern one's there now is for anyone else that wants to start something like this, that's huge, because it shows that there's participation, and we're only a small kind of retirement village, do you know what I mean? And that court is packed out every single day and night. Every time I drive past, every single hoop's in use. And someone posted earlier and just said, is there ever a time when these basketball players aren't playing basketball? It's so popular down there. Even the council were quite surprised how many people came out to play. So in areas like Clapham and London, build it and they will come. It's that thing, really.
But I think it's important as well to sort of stress to councils or authorities that, I think our basketball courts are now going to sort of spearhead the future development of Victoria Park in Malvern. Mm-hmm. So if you're shown to be investing in youth and development and fitness and well-being, you can sort of always tap into other funding that's available to help develop other sports and other activities as well.
Yeah, it's very much a chicken and egg situation, isn't it? Right? Like people will say, oh, well, there's not a lot of people that play basketball around here. Where it's like, well, actually, if there were better facilities, maybe there would be more people that play basketball around here. But it's hard to be able to prove until you've got the facility, right? Which is why, like you just said, I think it's an obvious place that if I was putting together a deck now to make the case for a court renovation in X area, I'd be able to say, well, here's an example of what they've done in Malvern. This was a situation before, this situation afterwards, and here's some testimonials of people that are now using the court that previously had become disengaged with basketball and are now using it again because there's facilities. And the more of these that happen, the stronger the case becomes to be able to create more, and it sort of creates this snowball effect. Anyway, I'm aware of time, so as you well know, because you sent them to me, I asked you for your top 10 tips for anyone else that is trying to do their own renovation project. So I've got them here in front of me, which I'm hoping I can read my writing as we go through them. I'm hoping you might have them in front of you as well, so I don't put you two on the spot. But I will go through each one as a bullet point, and then if you kind of expand on it a little bit, and we can maybe discuss it if I've got questions about it. So your first key thing and the key recommendation was for people to check your website, which is malvernhoops.co.uk. That's Malvern hoops.co.uk, where they can see a full sort of timeline case study outlining everything we've just spoken about and even more detail, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's some things we've missed just chatting here now, but you can see it's kind of became like a diary. So everything is on there that we went through.
So that's the first point. Second point, don't expect it to be easy. Why do you say that?
I think we fell into that one.
Yeah. I think we sort of felt we could do it quite easily. There would be no hassle, no problem. But then sort of we were met with sort of resistance from the councillors, the community, just trying to sort of get quotes from suppliers, and just, you don't realise how much work's actually involved in the process as a whole.
Once you read that kind of that document on our website, you realise, okay, actually that's good because it kind of shows people in advance, be prepared because this is what you're up against. But for us, that was foolish, I think. Yeah. we thought these things happen by magic.
Yeah. How hard could it be?
I would say, I would say on that, like, work on our court project started last week, and we started the initial proposal and discussions in 2018, so it's been 3 years to get to the point from first initial idea to actually work starting. Obviously in your situation, again, delayed because of COVID, and obviously COVID caused our problems as well, but you're at a situation where it's 5 years. So I think for anyone going into it, they need to look at considering a 3 to 5 year timeline. Anything earlier than that and you're doing very well, but be prepared to be in it for the long haul, right?
Yeah,
definitely.
And stay committed.
Number 3, and stay committed. You've got to be committed. And number 3, you put financing and budget. Can you kind of talk about what you mean by that?
So I think basically finding out what the council can offer. I think that moment where we went in and delivered that price tag, you can kind of gauge how far you're going to go from the room, and really how much they want to invest in what you're trying to deliver. If you can put up something that's, if you've got any financing that you can draw on, definitely do that. If you've got any businesses that want to help out or get involved, get them ready in advance. So when that moment comes and they say, how are we going to raise this money? You can say, well, here's a start, which we didn't have in the beginning. Yeah. We just went in blind, I guess. So definitely do that.
But I think it's important to remember as well that councils haven't got a massive pot of money to just dish out willy-nilly. They've got other things they need to fund as well, not just sport. So I think it's important to go in there with a level head and not just, we want this amount of money. You need to prove why you need it, is it justifiable, and then work with them opposed to trying to sort of work against them.
Mm-hmm.
100%, and I think there is, like you just said, there are different models there. I think you were blessed in the sense that the council were willing to invest. The model that I'm working with is working with a donation from ourselves, like the Hoopsfix Foundation, which we've raised from our own event. So I guess that's fundraising. We were able to get match funding from that from Basketball England, and then on top of that, we were able to raise the remaining money from private sponsors, Foot Locker and the NBA, that were willing to come in and do it. Which again is like, if you're able to show the need and you're able to have the deck and show the plan and sort of show that you have the commitment to see it through and make it happen. I think there's no reason, if you're willing to put in the work to be able to raise the sponsorship, that you can do it privately if the council isn't willing to put in the money themselves. And I think you're for anyone listening that wants to do it, you're in a position of power if you're able to go to the council and say, well, we've already got 10,000, 20,000 to be able to invest in this. We're just looking for another 20,000 from whether it's you or someone else. And I think they'll be more willing to listen if you already got a little bit of money, rather than going in empty-handed and say, oh, we're looking for you to put in the money and fund something. Number 4 was make use of 2D, 3D software to be able to get a mock-up done. I mean, I think that's a pretty obvious point in itself. I don't know if it needs much more detail on it, but maybe if there are any specific software tools that you recommend, or places that people can go to be able to find freelancers that are able to do the mock-ups for them to be able to sort of bring their vision to life digitally.
Yeah, I think, software like Photoshop, it's fairly simple to use, as long as you can just kind of get a rough idea of something. If you've got it, even down to kind of pen and paper, I guess, as long as you can start drawing something that makes sense and you can kind of put it in a presentation form that everyone can understand, that's really what you want to do. And, if you have got people at your fingertips that can do, kind of the web design, can do the 2D mock-ups, the 3D modeling, anything like that that's going to help them to kind of realize your vision. And I think the more things you can do like that, the easier the flow is, really. Trying to explain something with words is often hard work.
100%. I think, like if you can't find someone locally that believes in your project that has those skills, there are sites like Upwork.com and Fiverr.com where you can find relatively reasonable freelancers that you can provide a hand drawing for, or a photo of the courts, and say, look, we need a 3D mock-up with this on it, and get it done at a relatively cheap price. I think at that point, you don't have a whole lot of money, but it's definitely a worthwhile thing to do to be able to allow people to see the vision, so to speak. Number 5 was be a spokesperson, I guess, as an advocate. Like, can you kind of talk on that a little bit, and what you mean by that?
I think, like kind of what we were saying earlier, that it's very easy to kind of sit there and put an idea up and say, hey, it would be good if you did this in your town, and then you just disappear off the radar. People want to see, okay, who's going to step up, and do that. And a prime example of that is that a lot of people in the area have been starting to want dirt tracks for biking, and I've seen it so many times that someone says, this would be such a good thing for Malvern, and then you never hear them again. And then it comes up a few years later, it's like, oh, wouldn't it be amazing if there was a dirt track? It's like, you just have to be that person and say, I'm going to run it, I'm going to do it, throw your ideas at me, I'll take the step and go to the council, and we'll go from there. So if people can see that you're actually going to invest in what you're talking about, then they're more likely to back you, especially if they want that facility as well. And I mean, personally, I think the biking would be amazing for Malvern, I'd love to run that, but I just haven't got the time anymore. So it requires someone else to step up now and run that for them, for that community.
Yeah.
But I think a point on becoming a spokesperson as well, it's important to, if you're sort of shot down by somebody in the council or a supplier, to sort of really stand up for what you believe in and offer an alternative or a solution. If they say no straight away, I think that's one of the things we sort of start off with. No, you can't have it here, it won't work. Well, where can we have it then? Give us an example, we'll see if we can make it work. Or we'll go back to give us a week, we'll come back to you with another pro site. And then it was a lot of back and forth for that, wasn't it, with us? And
yeah, good few meetings. Yeah.
Got to be tenacious and not take the first no for an answer,
Exactly.
For sure. And number 6, get as much help as possible. I'm assuming you kind of mean involve as many people as possible, put together a team. Can kind of expand on that. And how were you able to get as much help as possible?
I think, again, drawing on the people that you know and the people that are interested in your campaign, that are following the campaign. First thing that comes to mind was that we had a guy called Warren, who we used to play basketball with, and he said, I really like what you guys are trying to do. I'll get your website together for you. So he, in his own free time, just knocked up the website the first time, and he said, if there's anything you need anything you need uploaded, just let me know. I'll get it all, all for free. It was just he saw our passion in what we were trying to do and saw potential in it as well. It's just drawing on the people that are going to help you out.
Yeah.
Another one was kind of the Worcester Wolves. kind of influence on the court as well, which was a big thing for the council to see, because is it just going to be for people to just turn up and play on it, or is it going to be used for anything other than, you know, a public facility? So we were able to kind of, through Tom as well, speak to the Worcester Wolves, and at the time it was going to be the men's team that were going to come and obviously use the facility for training. Unfortunately they folded last year. So there's a lot of things that kind of happened along the way, but those sort of things were what was getting us through the kind of, you know, the barriers really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the Wolves, I mean, the Wolves Academy helped out. Obviously, we've still got the NBL team, still got the WNBL team,
yeah.
The wheelchair team coming in January as well. So they'll be able to come use the facilities, host camps and that sort of thing. And Emma Jane Garner from the academy as well.
Mm-hmm.
She had a lot of influence in sort of giving us statistics and information regarding sort of under 16s basketball and how many teams were playing in the area and all that sort of thing. So a lot of influence.
I think, like partnerships are key, and you know, Sporting and love partnerships. They want to see you working with other organisations. I know that in our pitch deck, one of the key things we were able to show is we spoke to a few local event operators, local clubs, to say, you know, if we were to renovate the courts, would you be able to commit to doing X amount of work in the summer? You know, hosting an event here, doing this here, and of course they all said yes. You know, we had a quote from them in the deck, and that showed that, you know, we're not going in as a silo. We've got multiple organisations that are all sort of rooting for a refreshed court that they would make use of, which I think, you know, the council appreciated. Number 7 on the list. Make sure that you include the costing and the scoping for security in the project. Like, can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what do you mean by security? Why does a basketball court need security?
Tough subject.
Yeah, the courts were less than 24 hours old, and there was already people trying to pull the pads off the posts. Literally the night after they opened.
But we were ready for that kind of thing to happen, because there's been throughout the course of this process, there's been a lot of sort of issues down at the area where we were trying to get this court built, and we saw that, you know, things could go wrong later on. So we had to kind of factor in the idea that, okay, let's get ahead of that and try and, you know, let's get fencing in. Let's get we're now kind of discussing back and forth with the council at the minute about CCTV, which they're keen to kind of go ahead with. We have a system where we lock the gate every night, so it's a public facility, free for anyone to use, but it's open at 9 in the morning and locked at 8 at night, which something we probably also should have done through the time was work out who's going to be the key holder, because for the last few weeks there's been an issue with, because the park keeper has now got to get used to a new round of opening the courts as well as doing what he, you know, and sometimes the gate wasn't open. So all these complaints come back to us, like, why is the court not open? I've just travelled to come and play on it. And so luckily we've got keys now, so we can just go down and open it up whenever we like. But obviously within the hours.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I can. Security is definitely a key one. We had fencing put up for the start of the work, and it was broken down within a couple of days, and I had to have a conversation with the council, and we're working out whether or not we can get PCSOs to do patrols whilst the work is going on, because as much as we can have people on there right now before work on the floor starts, the moment the artwork or the painting and stuff starts on the floor, and if people are going on it, it's going to get completely wrecked. That's a very good underrated point that I think a lot of people will overlook. Number 8, you said consider the use of FlexCourt flooring surfacing. Can you kind of talk on that a little bit, and why you believe that is potentially the way to go?
So basically, from obviously what we were used to playing on, FlexCourt is just an absolute amazing surface to play on, and it's sturdy, it's solid. Like I say, it's good for your knees when you're playing. It also, the color system that you can have in there can really brighten up an area and bring new life to an area. So we've gone for like bright blue, bright orange, which we originally thought this is never going to get past the the council, but we went in with this kind of proposal, like we're just going to go for the bright colours and see where we go from there. I was expecting that they would say we'll just have them green or brown, to kind of blend in with the environment, but they would said no, we'll just go with the orange and blue if that's what you think is best. So when you drive past now, you cannot miss these courts. They stand out so well in the area, and it really helps to kind of bring people to an area now where they feel this is new. This is being, this is something that's been brought to Malvern, and it's something that Malvern can really benefit from. There's opportunity here now as well, which is something that we, growing up, there's not a lot of things you can do, especially if you want to play basketball with the risk of having a football kick to your head. This is now a place where you can actually come and genuinely play basketball. I think the FlexCourt has really helped to kind of bring that out. And, our contact, Dennis, has been absolutely amazing throughout this whole process. He's been patient. We've been on this for 5 years now, and, he's really wanted to help get this project together. And we've had to keep kind of going back and forth with him, saying, still not sure if this is going to happen. And, kind of hang in there, because, we're really trying to work with the council to see what can be done. Dennis kind of flew over to kind of meet with the council as well, so that was a good introduction. He was able to explain his product a lot better, and once that kind of contact was made, then they could trust Dennis. And I would definitely say, if you like what we've done, contact FlexCourt and contact Dennis, because Dennis is so helpful.
I mean, the whole court, once it arrived, it was down in a matter of days. It's the speed it goes down is frightening, and it comes ready marked, so as soon as it's down you can play on it. All the markings are already on there, and
I would say definitely on the point of colour, there's a bunch of, obviously there's Gareth, a project in the paint in the UK that has sort of been spearheading this whole art court movement, and then there's Project Backboard in the US, which does sort of art courts, and I think there's a number of papers that have been released that talk about the use of colour attracts more players to the area, kids prefer it, it's very good for the local residents, and then not only that, also like you said, it brings people to the area just as a tourist attraction of I saw those really colourful courts, let's go down and get some photos, let's get a photo for the gram, and you're bringing people down to the courts that maybe otherwise might not have attended. So I definitely think that's a good thing to consider. Number 9, you said consider putting other sports into the proposal, obviously like you ended up doing in Malvern. How much of a piece do you think that is, and do you think it's very easy for all of us to be very laser focused on basketball and only wanting to help basketball, but actually there is a lot of benefit to potentially involving other sports?
Well, we kind of discovered through this process that there was nowhere as a public facility for netball. There used to be years ago, but netball players were having to travel to Worcester every time they wanted to just play a game. So that's kind of 7 miles away from where we are now. And you think, I wouldn't like to do that for basketball. Do you know what I mean? So how can we bring that facility to Malvern? Because the community for netball in Malvern is, as we found out, is pretty big. There's good players.
It's huge.
Yeah. There's good players here. There's definitely potential. So, let's kind of bring them to the area at the same time. So having that extra sport as well helped to kind of keep numbers and what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of increase our
reach,
I guess, and kind of get a lot more people interested.
You've doubled your supporter base, essentially. The people that are backing it, doubled the number of organisations that are potentially backing it, doubled the amount of partners that you've got involved with the project. So, it's an obvious place to go. But I would say 100% if you can keep it separate so that you've got separate basketball courts, separate netball courts, that's the way to go, rather than saying, okay, let's try and put netball courts on top of the basketball courts and so then everyone's fighting for the same space. For sure. And then number 10, final point. Have a big launch, focus on a big launch day. Can you kind of talk about that and the importance of sort of making a bit of a fanfare about it when it's actually completed?
Yeah,
I think with a launch, you need to from day one prove that it's required and there's a want there for it. And if you can put on a show where everyone's gonna come to watch, even not play, but just be there and see it and experience it, I think that sort of automatically helps you grow as a sport in that community. We had so many people come down who never played basketball before, not even watched a game, and just they'll bring their families down and go on court and the kids taking some shots, and then the next week they're back again with their own basketball, taking shots and learning how to play the game. Plus, I think as well, it's if you put on a good launch show, it encourages more use from on a commercial aspect as well, like the potential of hosting 3-on-3 tournaments, mini leagues, that sort of thing.
And I think as well, if you don't advertise that event well, you're going to end up with an amazing facility and there's going to be no one there on the open day. That's crucial to kind of showing the council as well that there is interest there. If you don't do the work to kind of say, and obviously do it way in advance as well, say we're preparing this launch date for 6-7 months time, are you attending, and start getting those numbers up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. That's the other thing, is obviously make sure you've got all those social media accounts because you're going to be contacting a lot of people at a lot of times, and you can reach a lot more people. We did Facebook advertising to reach more people, and just to kind of promote it, because once it's had its moment, things will be on to the next thing then. So you really want to get as many people as possible to that open day, and show them what's possible, really. That's why it blew me away.
I think that's a perfect place to leave it. Just coming up on an hour again. Like, congratulations on all your work and sticking with it for 5 years. It looks great. I am making sure that I do pay a visit at some point over the next few months. I'll let you know when I'm coming up, so we can put a few more eyeballs on it. But yeah, no, thank you. And what about if people want to contact you? If people are looking to do their own court and they want to kind of get some advice from you guys, where is the best place for them to go?
I would definitely say go to the website, because that goes straight to our email through the contact form on there, which malvernhoops.co.uk, and you can contact us on there, either that or on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're always on, so we get back to people pretty quickly. So yeah, feel free to contact us.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, yes, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story with us. Again, I wish you all the best of luck. I hope this is the start of something special, and in 20 years' time, we've got a future NBA prospect out of Malvern that we can say started their career on the Victoria Park courts. So yeah, thanks again, and congratulations, and hopefully I will see you both on the courts at some point very soon.
Okay, fantastic.
Cheers, Sam. Thank you very much.